Would you dare watch the final minutes of a trucker's life before he vanished without a trace? His dashcam recorded everything, and for the first time, you're about to see the last ride down a cursed highway known as Kilometer 666. Disturbing noises, ghostly voices on the radio, and a shadow standing in the middle of the road. This isn't fiction. This video isn't just another scary story. It's a chilling deep dive into real dashcam footage, unexplained events, and a route that many drivers refuse to talk about. If you're into dark mysteries, horror rooted in reality, and stories that stay with you long after the video ends, you're in the right place. Tell me in the comments, what city or state are you watching from? If this sends shivers down your spine, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell, because every week I bring you stories where fear takes the wheel. Let's begin. You know that stretch of I-95 near Jacksonville? The one with mile marker 6666? Well, after what happened to Carlos, no trucker stops there anymore. And listen, Carlos had 22 years on the road, knew every curve of that highway like the back of his hand. The guy could drive that route blindfolded and still hit every rest stop on time. But that night changed everything for all of us. I was running a load of electronics down to Miami when I first heard about it on the CB. The rain was coming down steady, just enough to make the asphalt slick and the windshield wipers work overtime. My dashcam was recording like always. Insurance company requires it, you know how it is. The cab was warm, country music playing low on the radio, and I was humming along to some old Garth Brooks tune. Everything felt normal, routine, just another night haul through Florida. That's when the CB started acting up. At first it was just static, the kind you get when you're between towers or someone's got a bad antenna. But then voices started bleeding through, overlapping conversations, words I couldn't quite make out. I keyed the mic and asked, "Breaker 19, anyone else hearing this interference?" The responses came back clear as day. "Negative, good buddy. Channels clean on our end." But the static kept getting worse, like fingernails on a chalkboard mixed with whispers. I rubbed my hand across the windshield, trying to clear some fog that wasn't really there. The GPS screen flickered, showing my location jumping around like a glitch in the Matrix. 1 second it said I was doing 65, the next it claimed I was sitting still. "What the hell?" I muttered, tapping the screen with my finger. The damn thing kept showing I was stopped, even though I could feel the truck rolling smooth down the highway. My speedometer was rock steady at 60, but something about that GPS glitch made my skin crawl. That's when I saw them, or thought I did. Up ahead in my headlight beams, there were people walking single file down the right lane of the highway, just walking casual as you please, like they were taking a Sunday stroll through the park. I squinted hard, leaning forward in my seat, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. They weren't hitchhikers or stranded motorists, they were just walking, in perfect formation, one behind the other, moving slow and steady down the center of the travel lane. I hit my brakes gentle-like and flashed my high beams a couple times. Standard trucker courtesy. Let folks know you're coming up behind them. But here's the thing that made my blood run cold. My dashcam wasn't picking up anything. I could see them clear as day through my windshield, but when I glanced at the camera monitor, all it showed was empty, wet asphalt. Just the yellow lines and dark pavement stretching out ahead of me. No people, no nothing. My heart started hammering in my chest as I reached for the CB mic. "Breaker 19, this is eastbound Carlos at marker 665. Got pedestrians in the roadway here, single file in the right lane." I waited for a response, expecting other drivers to confirm what I was seeing. The radio crackled and a familiar voice came back. "Carlos, this is Big Mike about 2 miles behind you. I don't see nothing but empty road, brother." Another voice chimed in. "Same here, Carlos. You feeling all right up there?" I pulled over at mile marker 666, my hands shaking as I put the truck in park. The people were still there, still walking, but now they seemed to be moving toward my truck. Their faces were turned away from me, like they were looking at something down the road I couldn't see. The rain had stopped, but the silence was deafening. No tire noise from other traffic, no engine sounds, just dead quiet. I grabbed my cell phone and speed dialed Maria's number, my fingers fumbling with the buttons. "Baby," I said when she picked up, my voice barely above a whisper, "if I don't make it home tonight, I need you to remember something." She started asking what was wrong, but I could barely hear her over the sound of my own heartbeat. "I need you to know that I always loved you, Maria. Always." The line went quiet except for her breathing, and I could picture her face, the worry creeping into her eyes. I ended the call and stared out at those walking figures, knowing I had to get out of this truck and see what the hell was happening. The engine ticked as it cooled, and I could hear the wind picking up outside. My hand was on the door handle, every instinct screaming at me to stay in the cab, to fire up the engine and get the hell out of there. But those people, they were still walking, still moving in that perfect line, and something deep in my gut told me I needed to understand what I was seeing. I took a deep breath, pushed open the door, and stepped out into the night. That was the last decision I remember making clearly. The moment my boots hit the asphalt, the world went dead silent. No wind, no distant traffic hum, nothing. Just this suffocating quiet that pressed against my eardrums like I was underwater. The air felt thick, almost syrupy, and had this metallic taste that coated my tongue. I could smell something awful, like roadkill mixed with burnt rubber and something else, something sweet and rotten. My truck's engine ticked behind me, the only familiar sound in this nightmare, and I wanted to turn around and climb back in that cab more than anything. But those people were still there, still walking in their perfect line about 50 yards ahead. Now that I was outside, I could see there were maybe 8 or 9 of them, all wearing what looked like old trucker clothes, flannel shirts, worn jeans, baseball caps. They moved with this weird mechanical rhythm, like they were marching to music only they could hear. Their heads never turned, never looked my way, just kept facing forward down that endless stretch of highway. Something about the way they moved made my stomach turn. Too smooth, too coordinated, like puppets on invisible strings. I started walking toward them, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. "Hey!" I called out, my voice sounding flat and muffled in the strange air. "Y'all need help? This ain't safe walking on the interstate like this." None of them responded, didn't even acknowledge I was there. As I got closer, I could see their faces in profile, pale, expressionless, eyes fixed on something I couldn't see. Their lips were moving slightly, like they were whispering prayers or counting under their breath, but no sound came out. That's when I noticed the mile marker behind them kept changing. I swear on my mother's grave I watched that green sign shift from 666 to 667, then back to 666, then to some number I'd never seen before, 999. The numbers seemed to writhe and twist in my flashlight beam, and every time I blinked they'd be different. My GPS was going crazy in the truck. I could hear it beeping and recalculating over and over. The walking people paid no attention to the shifting markers, just kept their steady pace, and I realized with growing horror that they weren't getting any closer no matter how fast I walked. I broke into a run, my work boots slapping against the wet pavement, but it was like running on a treadmill. The distance between us stayed exactly the same, maybe 50 yards, no matter how hard I pushed myself. My lungs burned and my heart felt like it was going to explode, but those figures remained just out of reach. That's when I heard my CB radio crackling from the truck behind me, and a voice that sounded exactly like mine came through the speaker. "Breaker 19, this is Carlos. I'm walking with them now. The road goes on forever here." I spun around and ran back toward my truck, panic flooding my system like ice water. The cab door was still open, dashboard lights glowing warm and inviting, my coffee cup still steaming in the cup holder. But as I reached for the door handle, I heard footsteps on the asphalt behind me. Slow, deliberate, perfectly synchronized. I didn't want to look. Every fiber of my being screamed not to turn around, but something made me glance over my shoulder. The walking people had stopped and were now facing me, their pale faces blank as masks, dark holes where their eyes should have been. I dove into the cab and slammed the door, my hands shaking so bad I could barely get the key turned. The engine roared to life and I threw it in drive, tires squealing as I pulled back onto the highway. In my mirrors, I could see them still standing there in the road, watching me leave, their heads turning in perfect unison to track my movement. But here's the thing that still keeps me awake at night. My dashcam kept recording the whole time I was outside, 40 minutes of footage showing an empty cab and the sound of wind. When the police found the truck 3 weeks later, that camera showed a hand reaching in to shut it off. It wasn't my hand. I drove for what felt like hours, my speedometer buried at 80, but the mile markers weren't changing. Still 666, always 666, no matter how far I pushed that rig down the interstate. The fuel gauge should have been dropping, but it stayed pinned at 3/4 full like it was frozen in time. My CB radio was dead silent now, not even static, just this empty void that made my ears ring. Every few minutes I'd grab the mic and key it, screaming, "Mayday, Mayday, anyone out there?" But nothing came back, except the sound of my own desperate voice echoing in the cab. The dashboard clock was spinning backwards, numbers blurring together as hours unwound themselves. My coffee had gone cold, then hot again, then cold, cycling through temperatures that made no sense. Outside the windshield, the road looked exactly the same guardrail, same tree line, same exit ramp that I passed over and over, but could never reach. I tried taking that exit 3 times, yanking the wheel hard right, but the truck wouldn't respond. It was like the steering wheel was just for show and something else was driving now. That's when I started hearing voices coming from the sleeper berth behind me. Not on the radio, actual voices, muffled conversations like there were people back there having a party. I could make out words here and there. He's almost ready, and the road needs him, and worst of all, Maria's waiting. My blood turned to ice when I heard that last one, because the voice saying it sounded exactly like my wife. I wanted to look back there, but something told me that if I turned around, I'd never turn back. The walking people appeared in my headlights again, but this time they were different. I could see their faces clearly now, and I recognized every single one. Tommy Rodriguez, who died in that jackknife outside Ocala, Big Jim Patterson, who had the heart attack at the Flying J, even my old driving partner Eddie, who went missing on this same stretch of road 5 years ago. They were all there, all walking in that same mechanical line, and now there was an empty space at the end of the formation, a space that was exactly my size. I tried to fight it, pressed my foot down harder on the gas, but the truck started slowing down on its own. The brakes weren't engaged, but I could feel something pulling at the wheels, dragging me back toward that walking line of dead truckers. My hands were locked on the steering wheel, knuckles white as bone, but I couldn't control where we were going anymore. The radio crackled to life one last time, and I heard my own voice coming through the speaker. "This is Carlos. I'm home now. The road goes on forever." The truck rolled to a stop at mile marker 66, engine shutting itself off with a final mechanical sigh. I could feel my body moving without my permission, hands reaching for the door handle, legs swinging out of the driver's seat. As I walked toward that line of figures, I could hear Maria crying somewhere in the distance, calling my name over and over. I wanted to run to her, but my feet kept moving forward, falling into step with the others. Behind me, I heard someone climb into my truck. Footsteps that weren't mine, a hand that wasn't mine reaching for the dashcam. Now I walk this stretch of highway every night, waiting for the next driver to see us and pull over at mile marker 66. Sometimes we get lucky. A curious trucker who thinks he can help, who steps out of his cab to investigate. The road is always hungry, always needs more drivers to keep the endless journey going. And somewhere in the darkness, I can still hear Maria's voice on Channel 19, calling for her Carlos, not knowing that Carlos found his way home to a road that never ends. 3 weeks passed in the real world, but for me it felt like centuries of walking that same stretch of asphalt. Time moves different when you're dead. Sometimes a single step takes hours, other times entire nights blur past in seconds. I watched seasons change through the eyes of a ghost, saw my truck sitting abandoned on the shoulder, collecting dust and police tape. The other walking truckers and I, we don't talk much, but when we do, it's always about the same thing. How long we've been walking, how many more drivers we've helped find their way home. Tommy's been here since '89, Eddie since 2019, and now me since last Tuesday. That never really ended. The police found my rig exactly where I left it. Dashcam still running, still recording that empty cab. Detective Sarah Martinez was the lead investigator. I watched her through the windshield as she played back those 40 minutes of footage, watched her face go pale when she saw that hand reach in to shut off the camera. She rewound it 6 times, frame by frame, trying to identify whose hand it was. What she didn't know was that it wasn't anyone's hand at all. It was the road itself, reaching through whatever poor soul had been recruited most recently. This time, it happened to be mine. They ran the serial numbers on my truck, checked the GPS logs, interviewed every driver who'd been on I-95 that night. The weird part was that nobody could find any record of mile marker 666 existing on that stretch of highway. State DOT said their markers jumped from 665 to 667, always had, like 666 was just skipped for superstitious reasons. But Detective Martinez kept digging, pulled old road maps from the 70s, and found something that made her hands shake. Every map showed mile marker 666, clear as day, right where my truck was found. Maria came to the scene 4 days after they discovered the rig. I was walking my eternal route when she pulled up in her little Honda, tears streaming down her face as she stared at the cab where we'd shared so many phone calls. She pressed her hands against the driver's side window and whispered, "Carlos, baby, where are you?" I tried to run to her, tried to break free from the walking line, but my feet wouldn't obey. The road owns us completely now. We can see our loved ones, hear them calling, but we can never reach them again. That's when Detective Martinez made her first real breakthrough. She'd been monitoring CB Channel 19 every night, listening for anything unusual, when she heard it, my voice, crackling through the static at exactly 3:47 a.m. Breaker 19, this is Carlos, still walking the line. Tell Maria I'm trying to come home. She recorded it, played it back, ran voice analysis software that confirmed it was 100% my vocal pattern. But according to every cell tower in Florida, no signal originated from mile marker 666 that night. The detective started reaching out to truckers, asking about supernatural experiences on I-95. What she found made her quit the force 2 weeks later. 17 drivers had reported seeing pedestrians on that exact stretch of highway over the past decade. 12 had pulled over to investigate and were never seen again. Their trucks were always found at mile marker 66, dashcams showing empty cabs and unexplained hands shutting off the recordings. The dot kept insisting that mile marker didn't exist, but the trucks, and the bodies that never turned up, said otherwise. Now, Detective Martinez runs a blog called The Phantom Mile, warning truckers about our stretch of highway. She posts the dashcam footage, the CB recordings, the testimonies from drivers who were smart enough to keep going when they saw us walking. But the road is patient and it's hungry, and every month or two we get a new member in our walking line. Last night it was a young driver named Kevin from Alabama, pulling a load of furniture to Tampa. He saw us, pulled over, stepped out of his cab with that same curiosity that killed me. Now there are 8 of us walking forever, and somewhere in the distance I can still hear Maria calling my name on channel 19, not knowing I'm trying so hard to answer. 3 weeks. That's how long it took them to find my truck sitting on the shoulder of I-95, engine cold, driver's door hanging open like a mouth frozen mid-scream. State Trooper Danny Vega was the first one on scene, said he'd never seen anything like it in 20 years of highway patrol. My rig was in perfect condition, no mechanical problems, full tank of gas, cargo still strapped down tight in the trailer, but there was no sign of me anywhere, like I'd just vanished into thin air. The only clue was that dashcam still running after all those weeks, battery somehow never dying. Detective Sarah Martinez took the case, and the first thing she did was pull that footage from my camera. 40 minutes of recording just like I remembered, showing an empty cab with wind noise, and those strange sounds at exactly the times I knew they'd happened. But here's what made her hands shake when she watched it. At the very end, a hand reaches into frame and shuts off the camera. Long fingers, dirty nails, skin that looked grey and mottled like roadkill. She ran it through every database they had, but those prints didn't match anyone in the system. They didn't match anyone living. The detective started digging into the location where they found my truck, and that's when things got really weird. She pulled up the official DOT records for that stretch of I-95, cross-referenced them with GPS coordinates, even called the highway department directly. Every single record showed the same thing. Mile markers 665 and 667, with nothing in between. According to every government database, mile marker 666 had never existed on that stretch of highway. Never been built, never been planned, never been on any blueprint or survey map. But my truck was sitting right there in the spot where it should have been. Maria hired her own private investigator when the police hit dead ends, a guy named Frank Morrison who specialized in missing persons cases. Frank spent 2 weeks interviewing every trucker who'd run that route, and what he found made him consider early retirement. 7 drivers in the past 5 years had reported seeing pedestrians walking on the highway at the exact same location. 4 of those drivers had pulled over to investigate and were never seen again. Their trucks were always found in the same spot, dashcams showing the same 40-minute pattern of empty cabs and unexplained hands shutting off the recordings. Detective Martinez made one more discovery that she never put in her official report, something that would have ended her career if anyone found out she was investigating supernatural phenomena. She'd been monitoring CB radio channel 19 at the location where my truck was found, and every night at 3:17 a.m., she picked up a transmission that made her blood run cold. My voice, clear as day, coming through the static. Breaker 19, this is Carlos. Maria, baby, are you out there? I'm still trying to come home. The signal was strong, like I was transmitting from right there on the highway, but there was never anyone there when she looked. The strangest detail of all came from the truck's internal computer system. My rig had one of those new digital clocks that syncs with GPS satellites, impossible to reset manually, always showing the exact correct time. When they found the truck 3 weeks after I disappeared, that clock was wrong for the first time in its operational history. It showed I'd been gone for 3 days, not 3 weeks. 40 minutes of dashcam footage, but 72 hours of missing time according to the truck's own systems. The mechanic who examined it told Detective Martinez he'd never seen anything like it. It was like the truck had been sitting in a place where time moved differently. Now, if you're a trucker reading this, and you're planning to run I-95 through Florida, let me give you some advice. If you see people walking single file down the highway near Jacksonville, don't stop, don't investigate, don't try to help. Just keep driving and pretend you never saw anything. Because according to Detective Martinez's final report, which was buried so deep it'll never see daylight, I wasn't the first Carlos to disappear on that highway. There was another Carlos Rodriguez in 1987 and another Carlos Mendoza in 1994. And they're still finding trucks with dashcam footage of empty cabs and wrong-handed shutoffs. And if you tune your CB to channel 19 late at night and hear someone calling for Maria, don't answer. Just turn off that radio and drive as fast as you legally can, because some roads don't let you leave and some mile markers exist, whether the government admits it or not.